The last holdup of the hole-in-the-wall gang was at the Winnemucca Bank in the United States, that is. It was around 1900 that they knocked over the Bank of Winnemucca. They all agreed to settle their accounts with all the money they took from the bank down at Fort Worth, Texas. And so the Big Five of the Wild Bunch, which incidentally was the largest gang and the last one in the history of the West. There's an account that they had their own in-house attorney, Doug Preston. Can you imagine that? They were that big. And they had 400 riders at one time. In fact, trying to outdo the Daltons, Butch Cassidy actually knocked over a couple of trains and a couple of banks in 4 states on the same day. And they were all successful robberies. But he had to coordinate all of that. It's said that Robert Leroy Parker was not a bad guy. He wasn't a killer. And there's no record of him ever shooting anybody, which you can't say about Sundance. Okay, Sundance was a killer. But the two of them rode together. We all saw the movie back in the 60s, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Well, they reassembled at Fort Worth, and Butch bought them all suits, and they all got dressed up and had their picture taken at the photo lab down there. It's known as the Fort Worth Five. Butch then took the photograph, which would have been about this size, and mailed it back to the bank that had paid for the suits, and with a note saying, "Thanks for the contribution." That photograph became one of the most famous in Western history. It was sent to every law enforcement agency in North America, and actually helped track them down in South America later. It was a big mistake to brag about that when they knew they were leaving the United States. For being an outlaw, Butch was pretty smart most of the time, but pretty stupid on this. At any rate, they went down to South America. They went to Argentina first. There's even a cabin down there. Butch's great-grandnephew is a good friend of mine, has been in my store a few times, wrote a book recently about Butch Cassidy, my uncle. His great-grandmother, Lula Beckinson, Lula Parker Bettinson, wrote a book about Butch Cassidy, my brother, and claimed that Butch came back to the United States in 1925. Although she would have been not born yet when Butch took off, so a lot of people have put that down, except that the father, who did know him, was present at the time and said it was his son. Well, while they were in South America, they were employed, get this, as payroll guards for a while at the Concordia Tin Mines, which was American-owned, owned by C.R. Glass, and the foreman there was Percy Siebert, who became their good friend. They decided not to rob their own payroll, and so they had to go find some other payrolls to rob while they were down there in Bolivia. And it was while they were doing that in Tres Cruces that supposedly they were cornered by the Bolivian army and shot to pieces. At least that was one account that ends the movie. Me and others believe that that wasn't the end of Butch Cassidy and Sundance, but trying to prove their life in America was more difficult. Everyone that tries to talk about Butch and Sundance needs to talk about these 2 letters that I have in my hand, because they are the last evidence of Butch Cassidy, of the old Butch Cassidy in South America. The first is entitled From Santa Cruz, Bolivia, November 12, 1907, to the Boys at Concordia, and it's known by that title. We arrived here about 3 weeks ago after a very pleasant journey and found just the place I have been looking for 20 years, and Ingersoll, that's the hideout name for Sundance down there. Ingersoll likes it better than I do. He says he won't try to live anywhere else. This is a town of 18,000, and 14,000 are female, and some of them are birds, meaning soiled doves. This is the only place for old fellows like myself. One never gets too old if he has blue eyes and red face and looks capable of making a blue-eyed baby boy. Well, obviously, this is not a letter you're going to read in church, and it gets worse, but I won't read anymore. The point is that Butch was a rather colorful character in real life. And finally, he signed that Maxwell, incidentally, which was his hideout name at the time. The very last evidence of his life in South America, which some people say ended down there, is this letter. dated February 16, 1908, from Tres Cruces. This is just a very short note, again, to C.R. Glass, the owner of the Concordia tin mines. There's Sir Scarberry leaves here for sicker or something on the 18th. He will be there the 20th. At any rate, he signs this letter as Gillies. They all knew who Maxwell was by now, and Gillies was his mother's maiden name. From then on, it's conjecture whether he survived a shootout down there or not. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel now for new stories to come, and feel free to share the link with others.